Hello everyone.
Hello.
I'm Amy from AWS Marketing, and a very big welcome to every one of you coming here today. This event today is co-hosted by MEICOM, AWS Cloud Club, and AWS User Group Hong Kong. So actually, for AWS User Group Hong Kong, we have Meetup every month on the last Friday evening, so we usually get to discuss some tech topics. We have user group leaders and also community teams to organize a lot of tech topics, and really welcome so many of you from MEICOM joining here today to get to visit this space. Actually, this space is the AWS GenAI Experience Center, Event Center pop-up. So we have a lot of interesting GenAI related demos here, which welcome to have some play around with the demos later tonight after all the sharing from AWS Solutions Architect, user group representatives. And thank you so much, Henry, for organizing and coordinating for today's event. So perhaps I want to invite all three co-hosts to share some words with all of you. Perhaps I'll invite Henry.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Henry. I'm the Vice President of MEICOM from Hong Kong U, and it is my pleasure to have so many students coming over. I know I comment of you. I know many of you have a burning passion for AI innovation. Some of you wanted to build your stuff, and some want to get into AWS to get some insider tips, and that will be amazing. Okay, and after today, I'm sure you will have lots of lessons learned taken away from here. But I don't want to hold you for long. Just one important point: if you are from Hong Kong U, MEICOM is going to have many fantastic events incoming, okay? If you want to enjoy it, you need to be a member of MEICOM. So please reach out to me for further information, okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember to join MEICOM if you haven't. Yeah. Next, I'd like to welcome Fred from AWS User Group Hong Kong representing and introducing the user group.
AWS User Group. I'm Fred from AWS User Group from here, and AWS User Group is an official regional public committee sponsored by AWS, and we will host an event every month. Normally, the last Friday of every month, and include wide topic like. Generally, we play the AWS board game and have some expert sharing. And we welcome all to join our meetup. You can search from the Meetup app. We use Meetup to host the event. And later on, we will have a AWS security hero, Richard, to have a share. And he also is one of our team members, and we also looking for speakers for our future events. Welcome all to register. Thank you.
Last but not least, I want to invite Sid from AWS Staff from Hong Kong to introduce.
Hello everyone, my name is Sid. So I lead the AWS Cloud Club. So you can think of it as a user group that's localized in your university. Luckily, I heard that a lot of you are from HKU, and actually starting I think last week, we did open a branch within the University of Hong Kong.
Oh,
so
nice.
If any of you, like after today, I'm pretty sure a lot of you are already interested in AWS. And if you ever want to learn more, you can come join us at the University of Hong Kong. If you want to join, I can come find me later. I can give you a QR code. It's in Meetup. Our events are not as regular as user group because it depends on your university semester, your academic calendar, exams and stuff. But usually throughout the semester, we try to have, throughout the year, we try to have around a minimum of 4 to around 7 to 8 events. So I hope you all will enjoy today's sharing, and I'm sure We have quite a packed agenda, basically. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. So without further ado, I want to invite Clifford Duke. He is the AWS Senior Startup Solutions Architect to share about his view on GenAI Career and also sharing some latest hot technology trends and services. So please welcome Clifford.
Sorry, give me 1 second as I need to switch my laptop. Figure out. All right. All right.
I love the topic.
Hopefully it'll match everyone's expectations. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Clifford, and I'm a senior solutions architect at AWS. For those who don't know, solutions architects at AWS basically we're customer facing, but we're the technical arm of the customer account team. So if you have anything, if you're building on AWS and you have anything you want to ask, basically technical, any technical challenges or anything you want to learn, basically solutions architect's role is to be there to provide guidance, provide almost like free consultation. So just a bit about me real quick. Sorry, I forgot my clicker, so I'm gonna have to jump around a little bit. So a little bit about me. I started working in 2012. I joined the workforce as a software developer. Worked at a couple of different companies before joining AWS. I initially, when I first started working, primarily used PHP and C#, although nowadays kind of have to expand into a whole bunch of other things, Node.js, Python, whatever's needed. A little bit of Java here, a little bit of Go there, depending on the use case. I joined AWS just over 6 years ago, in 2019. Been a solutions architect ever since. However, as many may notice from here, my background is in software development, computer science. So I only really started working with AI and machine learning when I joined AWS. And my first foray into machine learning was personalization systems using our own service called Amazon Personalize. So that was back in, I think, 2019. Over the years, of course, AI being one of the hottest topics, started delving into more machine learning, learning about training models, and of course, subsequently, generative AI. But at the end of the day, I'm a software developer. I don't have the data science background. I only started picking that up during my experience here at AWS. So I'm going to try and keep it a bit more interactive today because I want to also understand what everyone, everyone has different backgrounds. Everyone may have different questions about getting into or keeping your skills up to date. So let's try and keep it a little bit interactive. If I have internet connection. Do I have internet?
Yes.
Am I disconnected? It works. All right. So if you scan this QR code, we're going to be doing a couple of different questions, interactivity, so we can scan that. For those in the back, that's also over there or over here. So I also want to know what everyone's background is. I'm trying to keep it a bit more general rather than focus very specifically on degrees or whatnot. I just want to know, because I'm coming at this from a technical background, so I just want to know everyone's background and experience.
Neck to neck.
Very neck to neck, very balanced. So it seems like most people here do know how or have studied software development in one aspect or another, do code, because I know most of you are in the workforce already. Maybe you did learn it in school, but don't normally apply it now. There are still some people who don't know how to code, and that's fine. That's the beauty of this modern day generative AI landscape.
Why coding?
Yeah, by coding, you probably have heard that. But it is still important to understand. Maybe you don't need to learn specifically how to code in detail. You know, traditionally computer science, you learn data structures, you learn algorithms. Over time, that gets abstracted away. You end up using frameworks, tools that basically do the heavy lifting for you. And that's basically how it is the entire time from my experience. It's always going to be abstracted more and more. All right, so yeah, most people here know how to code. Some people don't. That's okay. All right, so I have another question for everybody before I get started, just to set the baseline. I just want to know what everyone, this is a word cloud, so feel free to type in what you think. So when you think generative AI, what's the first thoughts that come to mind? I want to understand what everyone thinks of about generative AI. Oh,
So
replacement.
so negative, huh?
ChatGPT, yeah.
Replace hacker.
Hallucination, slop. Whoa, that's big. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yep. Of course, ChatGPT is going to be commonly the biggest thought, because they were essentially first to, even though there were a lot of different, generative AI is not a new technology. Generative neural networks have been around for a long time, but ChatGPT really came in, and even transformer architecture was like a few years before that. Automation, yes. Personal center, naughty liar. Terminator, job killer. Knowledge transfer. Not quite sure what fingers mean in this sense. 6 fingers. Oh, they were separate. Oh, okay. Oh, full sentence. Okay, that I didn't think about that.
Well, MEICOM.
Right. Scammers paradise, spaghetti, no need to waste time. Yep.
But I don't get it. Why spaghetti?
Is it because spaghetti code? Does it generate? I'm not sure. But yeah, some of the biggest things, of course, ChatGPT, very common. But yeah, automation is one of the biggest thoughts, which again is basically the key driver. It enables, I mean, as software developers, you're constantly trying to automate. If you've ever heard the meme of, you know, a software developer will spend 1 week to optimize a task that takes 10 minutes because we hate monotony and we hate repetitive tasks, menial labor. So I've done that. I've done my fair share of automation. But before, you would be writing code to automate one specific thing, whereas because it's a generative AI model, you've got that open flexibility to cater many, many different scenarios into different situations. All right. So yeah, it does seem like some positives, some not really negative, but more worries like job killers and honestly, yeah, with automations, with a capability of automating so many different facets that traditionally would require a lot of technical skills, yeah, I think it's very understandable to be afraid of it being a job killer. I personally see it as, if it reaches, disclaimer, personal thought, my own opinion, if it reaches the point where it can automate so much that it kills all our jobs, we've moved beyond as a society of work, essentially. Because I think that even if it does kill some jobs, much like historical trends, like we have jobs that have been made redundant, automated, but at the same time, new jobs, new roles pop up in order to do that. And I think it will be something that will take time. How long? I don't know. It could be years, it could be tomorrow, I don't know. but I think it will kill some jobs, it will create some jobs, as with other things. All right, thank you for that. So, a little bit about the trends that we've seen over the years. So, started talking about generative AI in larger scale back in 2023. A lot of the questions that we end up seeing in the beginning were all about very, very unknown. People didn't know a lot of things, like what is generative AI. The first concern, of course, security. How do we make sure that because it breaks the traditional mold of deterministic coding, where when you're building an application, if you write unit tests and things like that, you're going to get the same behavior. But a lot of customers, they were very interested in it, but a lot of them were very afraid. How do we go into production? Because what if you most likely have heard a lot of stories over the years about chatbots promising things that weren't true, or agreeing to contractually obligating things, like giving discounts when they shouldn't, things like that. And then we were very focused on the large language model, focusing on how do we interface with it? Much like coding, learning a programming language, learning how to use a large language model is also kind of coding but with English, with language. So prompt engineering was a very big thing, and everyone was really focused on how to do that. However, over time, as these models grew bigger and more powerful, capable of reasoning, people started seeing, okay, well, then I get it. I understand the core concepts. How do I go into production? So what are my use cases? And this is a big challenge regardless of generative AI. So it's a big challenge in all AI space, all machine learning domains, because a lot of times you have to understand what it's capable of in order to understand, and also understand what your business pain points are, what your business problems are, and then from there find a subset that are solvable with machine learning or generative AI. So the biggest questions were always, how do I prioritize my projects? Which ones should I choose? What is the low-hanging fruit for me to explore? Basically making it tangible and real. And how do I customize it to make sure it doesn't sound like every other, because at the end of the day, if everyone uses the same model, it will have the same behavior, same responses, and how do we make it more and customized? How do I customize it to fit my own business? Interestingly enough, this year I see a lot more maturity. Like we've had 2 years of everyone learning. A lot of those questions are no longer the questions I end up getting. Like it's jumping straight into building like complex systems rather than which large language model should I choose. That is no longer a key constraint, because they're all become so large, so big, that they all generally will be able to do this very similar capabilities. So then, especially with like agentic, now that they're more complex, we can now start talking about agentic systems, which I'll cover in a little bit. How do I dive deeper into this? How do we transform the entire business? So everyone's moving on into a more complex conversation. So we're now in the stage of maturity that I think is the perfect time to really delve into it if you haven't already, because I'll be honest, in the last 2 years, there were so many conversations of just trying to understand the basics and understand what is it. A lot of people treat it as a black box. A lot of people treat it, even the agentic systems, as a full black box, and forgetting that it's a whole system, not just the model itself. Everything is a whole ecosystem, kind of dropping off the entire application development, application design of things. But now things have matured. We're seeing standardization. It's no longer it's not as much of a wild west of, do I have to build everything? There's a lot of standardizations that make it easy to get started and follow best practices, essentially. Yeah, just some data that we've collected over time about that Deloitte IDC has found. Just to give you the grand scope of things, is that this was last year. So a survey from IDC found that there's going to be, the enterprises are basically going to invest more than almost $40 billion into generative AI. However, this year we found, Deloitte also found that only 10 to 30% of POCs are expected to scale to production, mostly because everyone really needs to experiment. So there's going to be a lot of experiments that may not come to fruition, and I see this with my customers a lot. When they try things, they might find, oh, in certain situations this isn't ideal, and it's very important to know that that is okay. That is, everyone's dealing with that. You're not going to be able to build a generative AI or build applications with generative AI or incorporate it into your own business instantly in one go. It's very contextually to your business, and so there's always going to be some experimentation. And even large organizations are saying that it will take them at least 12 months to be able to realize these adoptions, mostly because of all these barriers and all these challenges. Before I continue, back to a survey. I just want to know if anyone uses generative AI or how everyone uses generative AI at the moment. Whether you use it for personal use, like through an app like Poe, DeepSeek, ChatGPT. Do you use it in a business sense from a business app perspective, like Copilot, Gemini for Google Workspace, or Q Business? Do you build your own GenAI capabilities into your own app? And how many do not use generative AI? That's very interesting. In previous years, you would see a lot more people filling out I don't use generative AI, because even though when it first came out, even though maybe people were still trying to get used to it, a lot of people were already jumping straight into it, or a lot of people were not that used to it. And so there was a lot more people who only hear about it but don't use it at all. And it's very interesting to see now the complete flip of people who do use it versus people who don't. And it's interesting to see that more and more people use personal apps. And this is, again, levels of abstraction. Now that there are more tools, in the past it might be, oh, I have to be able to code to be able to access it, or I have to deal with costly subscriptions and things like that. But now it's becoming so ingrained in every aspect that it's very easy to just jump straight into it. Okay. Yeah, that is actually very insightful. So most people here, almost everyone here, have interacted and used generative AI in some sense. All right, so that's good. With most people knowing coding and most people already using generative AI, we can jump straight into building generative AI apps, because that's really the core value now. Using it is great in a personal context, but thriving in as a career is being able to use it within or implement or adopt it into your own applications or into your own business. So I won't cover too much about using it personally. So building generative AI apps. I'll talk a little bit about my journey, my personal journey on how I started picking it up, and this aligns with a lot of people, and I think we can skip over some things. So, in the beginning, when LLMs were new and we were all trying to get used to it, I mentioned earlier that we were doing very basic things. We were just trying to understand what is an LLM, how does it generate, what does it generate, and the use cases people were testing out were very, very straightforward. Even enterprises, we were talking to a lot of enterprises about building GenAI platforms, and most of it was around building a playground for internal employees to be able to learn and test out generative AI. So this is just, we want to be able to let them send a prompt and get results. Simple as that. And that was already big and complex for a lot of people to really get used to, because we're introducing a very technical piece of technology, but now allowing non-technical people to be able to interface with it, rather than having to build a machine learning model, train it on a large data set, and then fine-tune it. And all this requires really really specific skill sets to be able to have a final artifact that allows you to test. We now have this giant model that anyone can just interact with and test out very interesting use cases. So it started off with very basic things, write a document for me, or write an article, or be creative, things like that. And so the first thing people started having to learn, as I mentioned, prompt engineering techniques, very focused on interfacing and nurturing certain behaviors from a large language model. Now, of course, this evolved into many different kinds of techniques, lots of research papers about all the different ways that you can interact with a large language model. Zero shot, just sending a single prompt into it. Few shot, giving it some examples of behaviors that you wanted to respond with. So this was very interesting back in the day when one of the major challenges of large language models was doing computational things like math. So even something as simple as getting it to answer what is 5 plus 8 or something like that. And so people found that if you give it examples of correct answers, so 1 plus 3 equals 4, 2 plus 6 equals 8, it was able to generate a more accurate answer. And then we started getting into more complex reasoning capabilities, like chain of thought, where we give it an instruction, and we also give it examples of logic. So we externalize how we think and how we solve problems, thinking step by step, and we give it examples of that to try and nurture the LLM to respond with texts that simulate thought. And then more advanced, we start talking about reasoning and action. So this was previously, it was all very one way. It was very much give me an answer, give me an answer, give me an answer, generate this. But then we started saying, oh, if we're able to nurture a chain of thought to give reasoning and thinking logic, can we have it start interacting, making decisions, making choices of what it should do next to achieve that? And this is where reasoning and action or acting started occurring. And then we've got more complex stuff. I'm not going to delve too much into that with self-consistency, all these prompt engineering, automatic prompt engineering techniques. But generally, this was all very like the focus. Like most of the customers that I engaged with 2 years ago or last year was very focused on building the prompts, which is very interesting because it's not coding. So a lot of times my answer is I don't know. We have to experiment. We have to try. Like I have to try it myself. I tell them to give me an example and I'll try and tune in. And it's not so straightforward because it's not just about reading documentation and understanding how certain behaviors happen. It's really, we have to experiment all the time. And this is always going to still be the case with generative AI. Half the time customers say, oh, we have this use case. Do you think this will be good for generative AI to solve? I say, I don't know. We'll have to try. Like unless I've seen someone already do it exactly that, it's really hard to say, yeah. You can say this use case generally, but I will have to test with your situation as well. So up until now, it's just very much about prompting, getting results. However, that's a limit. And so when we talk about, people were talking back in the day about customizations, everyone was very focused on fine-tuning a model. So how do we incorporate new data or new behaviors into existing models? And a lot of times people would jump straight into, or people who have some experience with machine learning go straight into, oh, we have to train our own model. We have to fine tune our own model. And back when models were not as powerful, that was generally very, very common, which then again led to huge barriers. But new techniques were slowly evolved, and people started to find out training models is not necessarily the first thing you need to do. There are other ways. Especially if the model is powerful enough where you can, again, provide examples or provide references to help nurture it towards a certain direction. So people started adding context to their prompts, information. However, with businesses and with information being so vast, how do you choose what to put? And of course, traditionally, you would use maybe a search engine, find some relevant results, but we can also use a large language model itself to do that. And so this, inside a large language model, what happens like at a high level, essentially, your text is tokenized, your text is basically broken up into chunks, turned into vector representation, because it's all math. And so people thought, what if we do that, but for searching, to find external information? And so we started seeing the proliferation of embedding models that basically all it does, it doesn't generate anything, all it does is take that text and vectorize it, turn it into vector representation. The benefit of that compared to just keyword searches or looking for terms is that you have that contextual capability from a large language model. So instead of just looking for a single keyword, you now understand the full sentence, you understand the contextual meaning of that word, because one word can mean two different things in two different scenarios. And so from there, you build that context into it, which then, because it's all vectors, it's all dimensions, you can then use math to find similar or closest neighbors, nearest neighbors. So people started incorporating that into knowledge retrieval, taking their entire, this unlocks the ability for them to take huge amounts of data, store it into a vector database, and be able to really find very specific, relevant information. And only put that, because a large language model has a finite amount of what we call context window, so basically how much text you can send in, how much text it can process at one go. So you have to be very careful of putting most relevant. And so this I found very common last year and early this year. A lot of people were building chatbots and doing informational, and of course they're still doing it now, but we're getting into more advanced capabilities later. And so people were building these, what we call retrieval augmented generation, RAG systems, and this was already a very complex thing, because how do we take all these documents, how do we chunk them, how do we embed them, how do we vectorize them, get relevant information, and this was like major projects that I usually see. However, this year, because large language models have gotten so big to the point where they're now capable to do a lot of reasoning, if you look at like DeepSeek, where they have thoughts, their own thinking process and whatnot, this is what unlocks the latest, biggest thing, AI agents. Now, a lot of people, when I talk to AI, I've talked about AI agents, because it's, again, not new. Agentic systems, or building these kinds of agentic systems, existed already very early on in the life cycle. So I remember 2 years ago, I was talking about agentic systems, but a lot of people treated it as a black box. And people confuse what part is the large language model responsible for and which parts are not. They treat it all as part of the large language model. They treat it as, there were a lot of misconceptions of thinking, oh, well, if AI agents can autonomously do something, does that mean the large language model itself is doing it? Not really. The large language model is just the brain. Much like a human body, where you don't say that my brain can turn on a light switch. Your brain can control your hand to turn on a light switch. So an agentic system is very similar. The large language model plays a key function of being the brain and deciding what to do. However, it's all within the application context. The application does it. So what happens is that we have what we talked about with memory and information that you pass in, the goals of the prompt that you tell it what its objective, what it's trying to do. But we introduced this new thing, and this is what I talked about with React, is tools. We tell it that you are capable, you have access to these kinds of tools. How do these tools work? You're giving it instructions, telling it what these tools do. The agent, or the large language model, takes all this, decides on whether it needs a tool to complete, or to resolve, or to reach that goal. And it returns back to the application saying, use this tool. And then the action is actually run inside the environment, your application. You write that code, you write that logic. So it's just telling you it's just telling its intent. You, as an application developer, will build that execution. And so that's how you allow it to interact with the environment. You give it tools, the capability to, let's say, interact with a database or call APIs. And from there, once your application gets that result, it then continues the conversation, starts the conversation again with all that history saying, oh, previously, the previous context was you told me to use this tool, this is what the tool result is, and then it generates it based on that. So it's all still just a brain. It doesn't actually interact. And so when people start building out, this is like, I think the core thing about agentic API or apps. People forget or treat it as, still treat prompt engineering as the key part of, oh, how do I prompt it to do agentic things? Does this model have agentic capabilities? At the end of the day, it's not that. It's can it handle reasoning? Can it actually return back decisions to use this tool and how you parse it? In the past, it would be text in, text out. So you would have an application or a framework actually parse that response into something that is machine readable, so readable by your application itself. And so in an agentic application, of course, you have your LLM inside the brain, but your application itself, the actual processing that you built. Now, in the past, before, I mean, even when agentic, the topic of LLMs even started to occur, frameworks existed. LangChain has existed, I think, before generative AI, before ChatGPT. And it was very much trying to solve standardizations in natural language processing. How do you parse language into machine readable things? And so frameworks have always been very common, but a lot of people forget that this is the application and the core of your thing. And so, but now, it's 3 years later, there are many different frameworks, many different ways to build agentic systems. We recently just launched our own open source one called Strands. I'll show a demo of that in a little bit, just to give an idea of what's happening. But you've got really popular things like LangChain, who then created something called LangGraph, Career. A lot of these, when you look into it from an application or from a development perspective, you'll realize a lot of it is just workflow automation. A lot of it is really about input, process, what to do next, and if you've ever worked with things like Airflow or if you use any tools that have drag and drop like workflow, I suddenly can't remember for the life of me the name. I forgot the tool I was thinking. If this and that, no, if this and that. IFTTT? Yeah, IFTTT was one of them, although that was a bit more simple of just in, out. There were a couple of other tools.
Zapier.
Which one? Oh, Zapier, yes, thank you. That, yes, Zapier. So like a lot of these companies created a lot of these integrations. Thank you. My brain is, I need an LM to help me with that. Yeah, so Zapier, like tools like Zapier where basically, again, they solve these pain points of traditional application integration. Like how do you interact with this system, It's connectors. And this is what these agentic frameworks do. It's basically connectors for everything. It's how you connect your LLM into actionable results or other tools. And so from that's where you build out your agentic app. Yeah, that's how you build out your agentic app. It's not just the LLM, it's also the frameworks you use. You can build it yourself, you can write your own if you want. Sometimes I've played around with, over the years, I think most of these. A lot of them are nice. Depending on your use case, some things may be over-engineered, some things may be simple. I've hit barriers where certain things don't I want to do some things in the application that it doesn't fully support, so then it creates complex challenges. So sometimes workflows or sometimes your system might not even need a framework. Sometimes it's just, I'm just going to directly interact with the LLM and write my own logic. That's perfectly fine. But if you're running to get started and trying to understand the whole thing, use a framework, get started with a framework. If you're familiar with coding and software development, a lot of these mostly are written in Python because Python was essentially the choice it just so happened that a lot of AI or machine learning frameworks leverage Python to build, to run training and stuff. So Python became really popular and has become kind of a standard. But there's a lot of other languages. I think LangChain also supports JavaScript and things like that. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions so far? Sorry, I've been talking a lot and rambling. Does anyone have any questions? I want to keep this a bit interactive. If not, I'll leave one more Q&A slide at the end. So let me just give a quick example. All right, so disclaimer. I wasn't preparing to present this as a demo. This was me literally learning strands and a couple of other different tools. This is how I learn. Everyone has their own different way of learning. For me personally, reading docs are nice, reading blogs are nice, but I sometimes write. I prefer to write something, break things. It's like writing things and then having it break and then trying to fix that. Commits things to memory for me a bit better than other ways. So basically we announced Strands last week or a couple weeks ago, which is our own open source framework for building agentic systems. And of course, as someone who built with other tools like LangChain, I wanted to see what was different about it. So basically I used some really cool open source frameworks like Chainnet. Chainnet basically allows you to quickly build, it standardizes the UI so you don't have to worry about building the front end. So I just need to add a decorator, so our message, and then it will already create the whole chat. I just need to define like what it calls. And so one of the cool things you see about something like Strands, about building agentic systems, is that a lot of it is abstracted in the context of agent systems. So Strands provides you with an agent object. So you can all you need to do is really define your agent, provide it with the message history, provide it with the tools that it can use, give it a system prompt telling it what to do. And so here, I basically built out a couple of different things just to test out, because I also wanted to play around with long-term memory. How do you store, if you played around with ChatGPT, you tell it, remember that I like this, or remember this, this is long-term memory about you. I was trying to play around with this, and there's a really cool open source project called Memo, MEM0, that basically handles that for you. And so all I have to do is really define some tools with the Strands tool decorator. So same thing as software application development. When I write code, I just need to define a function. I wrap it with this tool decorator, tell it that this is a tool called save memory, give it a description, because this is where it gets interesting. This is how the large language model decides what to use, because it's all text-based. So you tell it this is the tool, this is what it does. Strands automatically converts all of these requirements into something that the large language model can understand. So I tell it that this is a function called save memory. It accepts a string, so I describe what it does. This is all passed into the large language model. So I just use Memo to save the memory, save that message to parse it. And I wrote another one just real quick, just a quick SQLite database just to store products information. Just wanted to let it be able to interact with, let's say, simulate a database interaction, query that product. And so from there, just with that, I'm able to launch an application. So this is the Chainlet UI. All of this is pre-built already. So when I send a message, that's what it calls that function. So if I say something like, remember I like trains. So this is passed into the agent system, to Strands agent. It knows that I have a tool called save memory. So it sends that, it tells me I need to call save memory, and it broke. Yeah, again, I was not preparing to send this. Oh, it did save. Wait, no, error. Oh no, did I break something? Let me rerun I'm sorry, this was like my personal project. I wasn't planning on demoing, but I kind of wanted to see.
It's like your wife or husband, if I remember.
Let me double check. Let me see if did I break something? Oh no, I did break something. Oh no. I broke. Wait, memory is not supposed to be value. Okay, I broke something. I'm sorry. I was playing around with it, and I think the save memory doesn't work. Okay, so let's pretend it worked. Let's pretend it works. So what memo does is basically takes that string, saying like I like strings, or if I have a full text, it uses an embedding model and a large language model to extract information and again vectorize it and store it into a vector store. This is an open source vector store called Qdrum. You can see that it worked before. So it saved my preferences, like I like to fly to Seattle, I like to fly to Vegas, I like to shop for toys and clothing, I like to shop for cameras, things like that. And hopefully it's not broken enough to do something like and again, this was I wrote this in a day. And I haven't fine-tuned it. So this is what I mean by experiment and play around, because that decided to not use any tools. I didn't prompt it well enough. Yeah, so second time I run it, yes. So let me find relevant information first. So I call the find relevant. So this searches the memory store to pull out relevant information. So shop for clothing. Again, because it's similarity search and vector semantics, it doesn't mean that it will always find exactly what you're looking for. So sometimes it'll include other things, like the flight to Vegas. It might be something product related, so it might be contextually relevant. And so from there, the agentic system then goes, okay, I have that tool now, I have that response, I have this information. So you can see here, I found previously saved preferences. Based on it, you like clothing and electronics, specifically cameras. I didn't control it to say that. And so then it calls find products, which again is the tool that I released, that I added. So it searches for clothing, returns clothing, and then it says, oh, but actually you like cameras, so I also like electronics. So it decided that it's not just using one tool, it's going to call it twice, because I only let it query one category. And so it decided that I need to query it twice, even though I provide, actually, if you look at the database, I actually provide, sorry, if I go to the tool categories, where are my categories? Here. My categories, as by definition, I've enforced it to only to know that there's only 3 categories that exist: only food, clothing, and electronics. But it decided that out of these 3, I actually need to do clothing and electronics. So it runs through it twice. So it first tries find products for electronics or clothing, returns that, and then it decides, based on that preference, I still need to do more. So maybe I will choose to also look for electronics because that's under cameras, and so it returns back the electronics, and then it decided that that's the final thing. I don't need to do anymore. I don't need to interact with the environment anymore. Let me generate the results. And so then it consolidates all that and outputs it. Now, of course, you can decide, you have full control over what it writes. I just decided that I wanted to export everything. You can choose to only respond with the final result. But for my own sanity, I've made it output everything, even middle, like these might be considered thoughts or some other things. Now again, I apologize if you're not very tech savvy or not tech savvy. If you're not familiar with code and development, that might be a little bit overwhelming. But I just wanted to really show you that, I really wanted to show you nothing. what I really wanted to show was, in order to really familiarize yourself with how things behave, it's really important to jump in and try. Like, this has no tangible use case. I wasn't doing anything for e-commerce customer. I just was I learned about 2 new tools, wanted to play around with it, chose to do them at the same time, which then introduced a lot of complex challenges because I didn't know either like memo or strands. And it's really just learning and practicing and playing around with all these different things that really familiarizes yourself, that allows you to that allows you to familiarize yourself with how things behave. A lot of the times that I see that customers struggle, or where they struggle at, is understanding that it's not magic. It's not a black box. It's not something that you need data science for. I didn't touch anything regarding data science. I didn't touch anything regarding to math. I didn't have to understand how a large language model works. I didn't have to understand how a transformer works. I just needed to know how to use it. It's a tool. It's a tool that you can leverage, that you can implement into your systems. All right, so hopefully that wasn't scary, and at least hopefully that dispelled a lot of like, oh, well, do I need a lot of experience to be able to get started? Not really. A lot of it is now so abstracted that you can write a little bit of code and it does a lot of things. When I first tried this, I didn't even give it a system prompt. I didn't even give it a persona to tell it that it was a product expert. I forgot to add one. But large language models are so capable now that just by providing the tools that it has access to, it's still able to generate and know what to do and figure it out. Now, of course, you saw certain behaviors were not ideal. It will sometimes, like the first time, it basically decided that I just don't know what your preferences are, even though I told it that it has a tool to find preferences and told it explicitly that use this tool to find preferences. It just decided that, nah, I don't know, and it just gave up. And this is where prompt engineering still plays a role, where you do have to try and be more explicit in your prompts and be more explicit in your instructions in order to reduce the likelihood of it behaving erratically or not ideal. But that being said, large language models are inherently non-deterministic, and so you can never cater to all situations all the time. So it's important to accept that you will never get 100% same behavior 100% of the time. 2 years ago, and even last year, I found a lot of customers were stuck on that point. They were too afraid to go to production because they were too afraid of it deviating. And they were so focused on making sure that it will answer everything 100% of the time that at the end of the day, you will never go to production. You will never launch a product because you're afraid of that. And I'm not saying that you should just open the doors and let it do whatever. But over the years, a lot of people, a lot of very smart people have worked on a lot of really cool ways to make sure that you reduce that through things like guardrails, guardrail systems. So before you process a piece of text, parse it through another system that determines whether it is relevant or not, or whether it's potentially malicious, or is it doing something that you are capable of. Stop immediately if it isn't. Or if it's generating output, monitor the output as it's streaming. If you've ever used like a personal app, have you ever experienced a situation where you're writing something, it starts streaming, and then suddenly stops, and then goes, actually, I don't know. That's because it's a guardrail system. It's triggered based, as it's generating, it may generate something that you don't want, like personally identifiable information. You can't prevent it from ever doing that because you might have used that as an input. At the end of the day, it's just one big piece of text that you're sending into a large language model and having it predict what the next text should be. And so you can't guarantee that what you put in won't be used coming out. So if you have, let's say, this is the person's ID, this is the person's like purchase history, you can't guarantee that it won't regurgitate that. So you can mitigate that by adding checks and balances before and after to ensure that as it's coming out, if it's suddenly outputting something that's sensitive, stop. Remove, stop generating, cancel it, change the message. Yeah, sorry, tangent, I wasn't, a little bit of a tangent there. But with a lot of these tools, this is where the complexity starts to happen. It's no longer about getting 100% accuracy, but now I'm seeing more customers talk about how do we make sure that we monitor for this? How do we add enough guardrails that can check for these things? And if it does deviate, how do we monitor for that? And so that's where large language LLM ops observability comes in, where how do we make sure that we can trace back what's happening and understanding, and there's a lot of really cool tools about that. If you're interested, you can always talk about that. Moving on, sorry, I'm rambling a lot. I'm sorry if I overran. I don't know what my time frame is. But how do I keep up to date? I think a lot of people will struggle. I mean, it's my full-time job and I'm struggling. I was originally supposed to also look after Web3 customers this year. Oh, people are laughing already. This year and last year, I had to choose. Like, both spaces are evolving so quickly. I can't pick both. I had to focus on generative AI as one thing. And so I can completely understand feeling very left out or feeling very overwhelmed because every 5 minutes there's something new. I'm like doom scrolling, but like traditionally I would doom scroll like TikToks or Reels or something like that. Now I'm doom scrolling news feeds for all the AI news because when you wake up, a lot of these innovations, a lot of them happen in the US, quite a bit now in China as well, but a lot of them happen in time zones that we're asleep in. So usually first thing I do, I wake up, I basically scroll through all my feeds and see what's the latest news and things like that. And it can be overwhelming. If it's not your full-time job where that's your primary focus, you might not want to do that. So curate your knowledge feed. That's one of the most important things that a lot of people, much like every other information, curate your knowledge, curate your feeds, curate an information space that isn't overwhelming. I initially subscribed to a whole bunch of different things, as many things as I could, and I got so overwhelmed because it was information overload. I couldn't do that. So I started distilling to key things where I'm like, oh, actually, this is informational, this is entertainment, this is good. Just some few things. Now, again, this is not my entire list of things that I follow. I also curate I also have like my Twitter feed and Blue Sky and things like that where I follow a bunch of different people. That's a whole different ballpark. But some of the things that I really like over the time, you can't go wrong with things like email lists or RSS feeds. Some of the cool things for high level. I'm not talking about low level building application stuff. I think that for me, I end up doing it myself. So I don't necessarily look for people writing a whole bunch of documents about code or giving code samples. I usually will search that out myself. You'll find a plethora of that on GitHub and stuff. What I usually do subscribe to are things that give breaking news, what's happening, bigger high level things. And then if something catches my eye, I'll take that and start delving deeper and stuff like that. So some of the things I use, Rundown AI is a newsletter. I find it very, very insightful. Sometimes they will publish things that are happening in the space, even things that might not be like breaking news. There's like some things behind the scenes that I just really skim through it, and then if I see something, I jump into it. If you're a developer, Fireship is a great YouTube channel and a training platform basically, but they do bite-sized videos of this is the news week, and it's not only generative AI. They cover a lot of other software development things, but I find it very entertaining because it's a video format. It's very short, very condensed. There's a bit of humor in it. I find it very entertaining sometimes. I get a lot of information from there for some reason, and I've noticed a lot of people in the comments actually do. Especially like Twitter or other places, if a big company announces like some big thing, a lot of people in the comments will say, I'll wait for the Fireship video because they condense it all in an entertaining format. And then Deep Learning AI is a really great platform to learn. They have a lot of free training courses to cover all aspects of deep learning, all the way down to how large language models work, how to build your own large language model, to high level like build agentic systems. And they do have their own newsletter called The Batch. And so I subscribe to a few of these things. I'll check it periodically. I have some mail rules that just consolidates that for me. It's really fascinating. I think given time constraints, I might skip that next bit. Yeah. All right. So up until now, I've been talking about a lot of software development oriented things because I'm a software developer, so I tend to learn and think in code. What happens if you don't know how to code? That's the beauty of generative AI. Because it's so capable and flexible, that it allows you to cater to. You don't necessarily need to know how to code to be able to interact with it. There's now a lot of different tools that do provide very low code ways to interact with it or build systems. For example, DeFi. DeFi is a platform. It's an open source project as well as a SaaS platform. They are a really cool team. They have a full low-code drag and drop UI that allows you to really, everything that I showed you just now with all that code, you can do that in a drag and drop environment. So it's fully extensible. They have a really great plugin ecosystem. So if you want to use tools that you don't know how to build, there's a whole community that builds. Let's say you want to be able to interact with the internet, do internet searches. They have plugins for that. They have plugins for interacting with lower level systems. So if you want to connect to a database, things like that, it's all extensible as a plugin. You can build your own tools as well, and you can build just drag and drop a workflow and experiment on use cases. So if I want to build an agentic system to do a certain thing, let's say I wanted to search for stock market information, stock ticker information, you can do that without having to interact with any code at all. You can just drag and drop and use all these existing tools. And their platform or their system actually also lets you productionize it and turn it into an API. So you don't even have to handle the hosting of anything, turn it into an app, create an API key. If you self-host it, you'll have your own endpoint. You basically just connect to like a standard API if you want to extend it, or you just run it from the UI. They have their own cloud-hosted version, so if you don't know how to host it yourself, just go to AI. You can connect. You can sign up for their cloud thing. Of course, they have subscription models and everything, but I think it's a really cool tool. I've been playing around with it for quite a bit, and I think what they're doing is really fantastic. Another tool that I played around with is NA10. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of this is very workflow focused. So you see things like NAN, again, drag and drop environment where you drag workflows. So when an event occurs, much like Zapier, when an event occurs, do something. Let's say I have an AI agent, a tools agent, so I can connect what chat model to use, what memory to attach. It's all standardized so that it's very easy to drag and drop. And then, oh, I wanted to send a message to Slack. Let me just grab that Slack node, put it in there, connect it up, and then have it sent. Very simple to build out your own workflows. I use both of these tools quite a lot just to, if I'm just trying to test out some logic rather than write out the whole piece of code. So there are different ways that you can interact with a large language model, and you don't have to know software development or code or how to write code in order to build complex agentic systems. It's very easy. It's easier than ever to get into learning it. And that's one of the key points about skill sets in this generative AI era. When you're building, a lot of times it's not so much about the low level knowledge because everything changes so fast. New models come out, new tools come out. It's really understanding the logic, how things work. When you learn that, it's very easy to translate regardless of what systems. The reason why I'm able to build out Strands SDK very quickly, I built with LangChain, I built with all these others. I learned about how what's happening behind the scenes, what's the logic, what's the loop that occurs. Once you understand that, it's really easy to swap in and out between them. Much like nowadays with large language models, it's not just one model, everyone's playing around with different models. It's not like you have to learn completely from scratch when interacting with a new model. It's not when Anthropic comes out with a new Claude model or when OpenAI comes out with a new model, suddenly everything changes. We're reaching a stage where the underlying behaviors, the underlying things that you need to understand are very baseline. It may be more powerful, it may be able to do more things, but the underlying knowledge doesn't change. How you interact with it, how you do the prompting, how do you give instructions, how do you interface with systems. It's becoming very standardized. So don't be afraid to understand that underlying behavior. And then from there, it doesn't matter when new things come out. You only need to learn iteratively. Like learn a little bit more, maybe how this behaves in a certain way, and things like that. Yeah. Some key takeaways, don't focus on just LLM's capability. A lot of people forget about application design. I may have already said a lot of these things. Keeping up with the trends, Usually when I said earlier that when I see something that captures my eye, I jump in to dive deep into that. What does it mean to catch my eye? For me, is my first question is, what pain point is it trying to solve? When someone announces a new framework, it's like, of course, we've got a million different frameworks now, a million different standards, a million different protocols. What is its key value proposition? If you can understand that within, a couple minutes of reading it, then it might be worth diving into. If there's a whole bunch of things and a whole bunch of buzzwords and things like that, if I still don't understand after reading just a bit of an introduction about it, if I don't understand what its pain point is, I put it aside and deprioritize that usually. That's my general rule of thumb. What is it trying to solve? The only way I can keep up with all of these or keep my knowledge fresh is constantly experiment. You saw earlier I had no tangible customer use case. My objective was just to play around with the framework, play around with the tools that I like. From there, once I understand the tools, I start understanding how I can apply it. And once I understand how I can apply it, then I can start mapping it to business use cases. Without that, it becomes a very chicken and egg problem where I don't know how these things work, so I don't know how to apply them, and therefore I don't know how to figure out what business challenge can this solve. Which then goes back to, then I don't know what to focus on. So it becomes a cyclical loop. So keep experimenting without it. And of course, the thing I just said earlier, use UI tools if you're not familiar with coding, or use coding agents like RQ Developer, GitHub Copilot. When I said I came from a software development background, I'm more focused on back-end development. I did do a bit of front-end development with, let's say, React and stuff like that, but up until now, I'm god-awful with design. I cannot, for the life of me, write CSS, and so whenever I build these prototypes, a lot of the things that I get stuck on is the front-end side. And so even if you have a software development background, it might be very specific to a certain thing. So you use coding agents to help you with the areas that you're maybe not so great at. So I use it to constantly generate front-end code for me. It may not be perfect, it may not be exactly what you want, but at least it gets the job done. And yeah, so sorry for rambling. Let's open the floor. I've talked a lot about a whole bunch of things. Some of it may be relevant, some of it may not be relevant to you. I want to see if anyone has any questions they want to ask me, career-wise, or open the floor. Any open-ended question. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting. Actually, this morning my practice in
Yeah.
and then one.
I think we can use my, it's not, you cannot hear me.
Okay.
Quite far back.
I'm just wondering, because this morning actually wondering, like, there's a lot of things that we can do now. A lot of is that empowering people that without strong knowledge to do code. But one thing I'm mindful of is like how might we protect ourselves and also our personal data? Like I always think about sometimes I'll use POE for my company stuff, don't tell my boss. But like actually, if I'm the one suffering in a corporate environment, what are the practices that we should follow? Yeah. It's a bit deviating.
No. That's perfectly valid. That is quite a big challenge in this space because since large language models are so powerful, people are more open to sharing more information. And this is where you start seeing concerns about do you trust the system? Do you trust the people behind the system? Not just the large language model provider, because let's say, for example, POE, they're a gateway. So they aren't the models themselves, so you have to interact with them, send your data there, and then they send it to the provider behind the scenes. So then you start seeing there's a chain of trust. Do you trust PO? Do you trust the model provider that they use? It's very important to, especially in a corporate environment, it's very important to choose providers and platforms that have strongly consistently demonstrated this care to security. Now, of course, at the end of the day, what you trust is it's going to be applied. I don't think this is very much a generative AI question as it is about all sorts of everything. Like every SaaS platform that you use as a company, do they follow, or do they basically, have they proven themselves? And that's why there's a lot of compliance programs where they get audited, ensure that that's how they handle data. And this applies to generative AI as well, and I think more so now because everyone's so open to it. What a lot of companies end up doing, that's why a lot of companies build their own internal systems. So rather than having everyone, let's say, you can go for, if you're a smaller company, of course, you can choose a SaaS provider that does provide this kind of corporate environment where you can control that. Or we've seen larger enterprises where they go, I just want the actual access to the large language model. For example, like we have Bedrock, that's our foundation model service that basically gives you access to a bunch. We've historically always shown like our platform in terms of data security, the way we handle compliance, the way we handle data security is top of the top. Like we don't have access to any of that information, that data, how we process that data, it's all done through audits and whatnot. So customers inherently trust us. And so they build their own platform as the gateway, rather than, let's say, they will have their own platform internally facing. And that also enables them to plug in their corporate information, let's say knowledge bases and API systems together. But it is a very important question to ask when you're as a corporate governance, when you're choosing to adopt a system, to understand the whole chain of command, to understand. That's why a lot of these, even for us, when we, let's say, adopt a third-party platform to use as a business rather than as a platform provider, we have a whole bunch of security audits that we have to go through. We go through the compliances and whatnot. If it's, how much you trust is that, like, usually these are enough to answer that, or to answer those questions, the compliance audits, because those are very standard, SOC, PCI DSS, things like that. We've seen some customers who go, it doesn't matter, we're so afraid, we will host our own. So they won't use a platform, they'll use open source models, run it in their own GPUs, and constrain it like that. There's a whole lot of different ways to approach it. And it really depends on your own use case, what level of where your concerns lie in terms of data security, and I think that's the most important thing. From a user perspective, that's another story. If you're using apps and things like that, always be mindful that if you're an end user, a lot of these times these platforms don't necessarily have the same protections, or it may be the same platform, but they may not say certain things. So if you're a user of an app, they may say, if you use our API, we don't track anything. But if you use our app as an end user, we may use it for feedback purposes or training purposes. And it's very important to be mindful of that. Different interaction points can also introduce different compliance or different security rules. Hope that answered your question. Are we wrapping? Sorry, I've rambled so much. Let me wrap up. I'll be still here for the rest of the thing. If you have any questions, feel free to come over. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope it covered enough. Feel free to in. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, and we want to invite Richard too. He is the AWS Security Bureau and also an important member of AWS User Group, to share more as well.
So, hello everyone. Okay, I know everyone is hungry, so I'll keep it short. But why is it not showing my slide? Okay, yeah. So a little bit about. Clifford talked about some very deep dive tech and some career stuff. I'm going to talk about more like casual thing is my AWS community journey. So first of all, I'm Richard. I'm an AWS security hero. But a lot of time people ask me, am I a worker for AWS? The answer is no. AWS hero or maybe someone also know AWS community builders is a AWS community program that I mean is everyone is voluntary to like join the community to learn each other from each other and contribute to the user group, to the community. And does AWS pay me to promote their content because I also do some blogging about AWS stuff? The answer is no, but it's really hard to convince people because I always talk about AWS thing, and AWS did sometimes pay me to attend their event in let's say the AWS event in Las Vegas, and it's really difficult to convince people. So I'm going to talk about my journey. It begins in 2019. Back in the day when GenAI is not a thing, there's a competition hosted by AWS. It's called a deep racer. It's basically a car that you need to. There's a camera in front and there's an AI model. You need to train it to let it run on the track. And there's a competition. You need to train a model to run the car the fastest. And I'm very lucky that I was in the 16, and then AWS invited me to go to the Las Vegas, the AWS re:Invent, the biggest yearly event hosted by AWS, to join the finale competition there. And my result is not too bad, but I did win. But the part is not about winning the game or not, or going to AWS re:Invent for free. But the thing is, by participating in the Deep Racer competition, I know many other AWS community, AWS user, and they're really eager to share what they learn and help each other. And after I come back, it's 2020, COVID started, and I stuck in Hong Kong. So I just try to do something to learn from what I learned from those AWS users. They are eager to share their experience. So I tried blogging about my AWS experience. And then I also do more thing is like do webinar to tell people about my Deep Racer journey. And I also had a very interesting AWS user group in Peru invited me to talk in a webinar about using Lambda, using API Gateway. And then in 2020, there's also a new AWS program called AWS Community Builders. I was very lucky. I applied it, and I can participate. They accepted my application, and I joined. So what's that? The Community Builders program looks like. This is the stat I get from yesterday. The AWS Community Builder has a Slack workspace. Now there are over 3,000 people there. And I think in 2020, when they first started, it's around 1,000 or under 2,000. But what made me feel in the group is that I see many AWS users from all over the world very eager to learn, to share their experience, and they give me more motivation. So I started to join different AWS event, more opportunities. There's in 2023, I think, in the AWS Staff Day, AWS invited me to talk about some of my career about AWS, and also I also joined some podcasts to talk about my project in work, and it also gets some traction. If you don't know Jeff Barr is the AWS chief evangelist. He always write blog posts about some AWS new features, many followers. And he followed my blog. So it's really exciting and gives me more motivation. And then, and this is the AWS Nitro Enclave. It was a new service back in 2020, and I started to do some side project on that service. And then AWS adopted my open source side project as their workshop. This is really exciting to me. And then in 2022, this is my second time to the Las Vegas AWS reInvent, and it's also my first time speaking in the AWS event. And moving forward to 2023, I became an AWS hero. So if you don't know, AWS Hero is AWS community program to recognize the people that contribute a lot in AWS community. So I was very honored to be one of the around 200 AWS Hero in the world. And then last year, 2024, is really my adventure. I went to this is San Francisco. They have an AWS Community Day. I also speak on the Community Day. And this last year reinforced is a smaller event in AWS about security. I also was invited to talk in the reinforced. And also on the right-hand side is a roundtable discussion, and I learned a lot from different participants in the event, talk about what is their struggle in terms of cybersecurity in their jobs. And then this, I also joined in many, joined with other AWS heroes in the world and discuss about many things about how they use AWS in their work. And also, it is a very good opportunity to become a hero is that we talk really closely to the AWS service team to give feedback, and they also give us their team roadmap and their insights. And also many adventure like this in last year, December, we met many different participants as well. And this interesting event is hosted by AWS user group in Japan. They hosted a continuously 24-hour webinar and invited speakers from all over the world, and I'm very honored to be invited as one of the speakers as well. And of course, the AWS user group in Hong Kong, I also participate as a volunteer and to give some talk. And then last year, we also hosted a workshop in, I think it's an open source summit. And then I also volunteer to host many different user group events as well. So I want to talk about from my journey is sometimes it's not about the job, not really about how to do better in the job. Or of course, if you're working for your life, or then of course you need to pay. So sometimes it's really in your job you cannot control much on what you can achieve or not. But joining the community is a good thing for me. Is actually you always see many experts in other areas, but you will always know more than other in some areas. So don't be shy and to share your knowledge, share what you know. Maybe something you do back in your daily job is you treat it as really not it's just a small thing. But if you try to maybe writing a blog post on sharing how you do this project, maybe this small thing is really sparking the discussion on your audience, within your audience, and then it's also learn from each other, be humble. It's not only joining a community is not only about learning from what other people say, but if you are sharing your experience, sharing your knowledge from maybe a side project you have just done, and then you hear your fellow community members' feedback, then you can validate your knowledge and also learn more from the discussion as well. And it is really it is not intended, but I feel like when I join the AWS community and do my sharing and whatnot, it really boosts my career. It is very a fun fact is one day I was in a meeting with my boss, and then my manager told my top boss that, let's say, hey, Richard is the AWS hero. You can count on him. He is the expert of AWS. Then my boss really know what is AWS hero, and here, oh wow, we have an AWS hero in our company. It's amazing. And then suddenly I become the subject matter expert of AWS in the company. So this is really an intended result of joining the community. So, how can you join the community? I treat the AWS community as a platform to express your experience, sharing, and get feedback from your peers, and also. So there's a form that our AWS user group, as Fred also mentioned in the beginning, we host user group meetup every month. We really want to have a speaker for every event. So if you have anything about AWS you want to share, feel free to register. And then this is really a good platform for you to share what you learn. Maybe in your daily job, your work is not appreciated by your boss. This is the place to be appreciated. So feel free to register as a speaker. And then this, as I mentioned, I first joined the AWS Community Builders in 2020. They have an application every year. Unfortunately, the cycle for this year has closed. So, but you can join the waitlist and then stay tuned for the next round. It will be at the beginning of next year, I think. And then it's really easy. You just need to have, I think it's 2 contributions on your community. It can be a blog post. It can be you speak in the Meetup. Anything you contribute to the AWS community can be counted as a contribution to be qualified to join the AWS community builders. I can guarantee you can meet many like-minded AWS users and share the experience. And next month we will also have an AWS user group meetup. So stay tuned. And thank you.
Thank you, Richard, for the very fruitful community journey with AWS. And yeah, for AWS User Group Hong Kong, you may please follow the AWS User Group Hong Kong on the Meetup page, because the event is posted on the Meetup platform every month. So I hope to see you again in the future as well. And I know that many of you may be